What's good, y'all? Hope everybody's well. Welcome to the Black Masculinist News. Y'all know the deal. Just here to drop a little daily info on you, especially as it pertains to black men, right? So, in this particular situation, what we're looking at today is a case in history that many don't really know about. Now, I did talk about it a little while ago, but some new information came about that I thought was worth a return. And obviously, we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but just to kind of put another feather in your cap in terms of what's going on. So we found this is a video actually here on YouTube um, that is dated October 2020. So as early, or I should say, as late as last fall, there's still information coming out about Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if you're not familiar, Tulsa, Oklahoma is the uh, um, Black Wall Street town massacre, right? If you haven't seen the HBO show Watchmen, you can actually find a clip of that on YouTube. Just put in HBO Watchmen and then put in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you'll see a clip, probably the realest clip I've seen about the actual, what the actual massacre looked like. At the end of the day, this was an incident that was based off of the jealousy of a neighboring white town at how the black town was thriving despite the Jim Crow laws that prevailed over the land. That didn't allow black folk to really participate in the white economy. So Tulsa was one of those spaces where black folks were thriving, and it had a great deal of power. Had their own banks. They were even setting up settlements in Africa. There was all kind of things going on in Tulsa. And on a particular day, you had an elevator operator who some say tripped into the elevator, some say stepped on the foot of a white woman. But either way, she screams. He's arrested. And, from there's talk of a lynch mob. Some black men gather together at the courthouse to protect him. And from there, all hell breaks loose because the neighboring town, much like Rosewood, Florida, used the incident as an excuse to burn down Tulsa. And with that, literally take the land of the people that were there. So for those that weren't put into a concentration camp, many were slaughtered. And from there, whites literally just took ownership, sometimes of the homes that were still standing, sometimes of the land under the homes that were burnt down, right? The whole city was taken over. And so at this time, actually, I think I mentioned this before at Fresno State about really 10, 11 years ago. We had a documentary maker who made the film Banished, I believe, documentary film, come to the campus and actually talk about this. And I think he recorded an incident of an older white man telling a story about being a young boy at the time in Tulsa and literally walking by a cemetery after the town massacre and watching them load black bodies, into the hay baler, right? And the bodies were disseminated all throughout the actual soil of the cemetery. But this particular incident, we find, or they found, about 12 bodies so far, and that's of the time of this recording, that were part of a mass grave of those who were killed in Tulsa, right? So they're still finding things out. I'm not sure how many they found in its entirety. If you have any more information about this, feel free to put it into the comment section. But this is definitely a historic occurrence because they're still finding things out. Now, the survivors from Tulsa tell the story very explicitly on what happened. They're very vocal about it. You can find recordings and interviews with them on YouTube yet again. So check it out, share the story, tell people about it because this is a part of the history. This is a part of African American history. And in many ways, it really lays the groundwork for understanding, what actually took place historically when you had black folk who followed all the rules and still were able to push beyond the limitations of racist policy and the full extent of the law. And regardless of doing all of that, they happen to live in the city that is the first one in human history to be bombed from the air. Tulsa was bombed from the air. The sheriffs apparently got into crop dusters and dropped Molotov cocktails from the sky. That you can see also depicted in the HBO clip from Watchmen, right? So don't get it twisted. This is one of the worst events in American history. and it is something to pay attention to. But there are arguments that there were up to 500 town massacres throughout United States history. It's just a measure of how many people and to what extent. And some towns weren't really towns. Like Rosewood was a strange little stop in Florida, but it's not really a town. And you can literally drive by it now and not notice because it's not a full city the way Tulsa is. But you have neighboring folk who live next to the Greenwood area in Tulsa whose families still have the deeds to the homes they lived in, still have memories, still have information. And these kind of town massacre occurrences happen throughout the United States. And there would be neighboring town folk who were still alive that still had the paperwork. There was one, I think this goes back to the Banished documentary I mentioned, where there was an older black woman who was interviewed about a town massacre her family was involved in. This was not Tulsa, nor was it Rosewood. And she actually told the interview, she showed the paperwork of the home that they owned still. And then when they went to the home, she actually showed where her parents were buried on the land. And there were white folks living in the homes that refused to even acknowledge it. The courts refused to acknowledge her claim. None of that was taken seriously. And the interviewer actually pointed out that one of the ways that he found many of these town massacres was simply by going to cities who would have no newspaper, printings for a certain time period for like a month. You know what I mean? Even some of the daily news wouldn't come out for a good period of time. And that was the way they kind of censored the information. And then he would begin to go around and interview different people in the neighboring black town and find out what occurred. So there were quite a few of these in American history. Many of them were buried. We're still finding out information about a lot of them. And Tulsa is one of the most known, and they're still finding bodies. So there are small towns all over where this information is still very much under the table. We still have sundown towns in America. Nobody, really pays attention to that. Sundown towns basically meant you had to leave before sundown if you were black, or you'd be lynched. They still exist, right? So these are things that still occur, still impact people, and definitely still impact black progress. In as much as we want to pretend like they don't, these occurrences are still very much a part of how America functions, even if it is under the table, even if it doesn't make the evening news. All right. So that said, you guys have a good one. I will talk to you soon. Peace.